Hey guys, welcome to Stories with Steve. I'm Steve Rader, and we are going to start this Stories with Steve project. What it is I'm going to be telling stories that we can all learn life's lessons from. These are stories that have happened to me in my personal experiences and or people close to me. The reason I came up with this idea, or how I came up with this idea, is I look around at the world today and there's a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of separation amongst us as people, and I really think that we can learn from each other. I feel like the fact that we're different is what makes us stronger, and I know that myself as an individual, if I hung around people who all thought like me, I wouldn't be as good of a person. Having people around us with different viewpoints, with different perspectives, and with different ideas makes us better people. It gives me the opportunity to have sympathy for other people, to learn from them, and to become a better person. And I really believe like we're in a situation right now as a country and as a people that we're pretty divided, we're pretty polarized. And I wanted to come up with a way to bring us together with something that we all have in common. Because I truly believe we all have more in common than we know. We just choose to focus on the things that separate us. And maybe we don't choose to focus on the things that separate us, but there are groups of people out there that continually push that upon us, our differences. And I wanted to start Stories with Steve and just simply tell stories that we can all relate to. Everybody likes hearing stories. Everybody enjoys hearing a good story, whether it's funny, sad, whatever it is, and taking something from that story and applying it to our lives. And that's what I want to do. So I'm going to be telling stories throughout this year and posting them. And if you like them, share them with people, and hopefully we can spread the word that as human beings, we have more in common than we don't have in common. And what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, we all really want the same thing. If you're parents, you want what's best for your children. You want them to get the best education, to grow up having some of the things maybe that we didn't have as parents. If you're a spouse, you love your spouse. You want what's best for them. You want what's best for your marriage. If you're a neighbor, you want to be able to live in a neighborhood where you get along with everybody. The great thing about that, though, is that we live in a society today where we all have differences that we bring to the table, and those differences are strengths. And one of the fallacies that I want to correct, so to speak, that takes place today is a lot of people have heard of the golden rule. And what the golden rule is that we treat people the way that they are, the way that I want to be treated. Treat someone the way you want to be treated. And the problem that I see with that is that that's not how people work. I'll give you an example. My mother, whom I love dearly, short little Mexican woman, she loves her meat charred to a crisp. I mean, almost to the point to where some people would call it jerky, because it's not steak, right? I, on the other hand, like my steak medium rare, really juicy. So if every time I went to cook my mom's meat, if I was barbecuing and grilling meat, and I cooked her meat the way that I wanted it, and handed that to her, she would think one of two things. She would be like, either Steve doesn't respect me, like me, or care about what I wish and what my desires are, what I want, or he's just crazy. And oftentimes, because we've been taught that, we treat people the way we want to be treated. We need to treat people the way they want to be treated. The difference between handing my mom a juicy steak and handing my mom a piece of charred meat is one makes her happy, the other one makes her question what my thoughts about her are. And I call that the platinum rule. We need to learn to treat people the way they want to be treated. But in order to do that, we have to appreciate and recognize the differences that we have as human beings. What makes us special is what is different. I have a friend who doesn't go to the same church that I do, but he's one of my best friends. And I enjoy talking with him because he gives me insight and perspective that I don't have. And that helps me be a better friend to him. And so what I'm hoping is that through telling these stories, we're going to be able to communicate and to connect better as human beings and treat each other the way we want to be treated. I expect my kids to treat me the way I want to be treated, and I do my best to treat them the way that they want to be treated. So we're going to start off telling stories. Everybody likes to hear a good story. So the first story that I have for you guys is, this happened probably 8 to 10 years ago. I have 6 children and a beautiful wife, 3 boys and 3 girls. So a lot of the stories that I'm going to be telling are going to be coming from my family experiences. But this happened 8 to 10 years ago, and my 3 oldest kids, Colby, Sierra, and Canyon, it was a Sunday morning, and we were cooking breakfast before church, and I noticed through the window that down in our lower property, we have a tree house, that there were some kids that were playing in the tree house, and we didn't know who they were. And I'm in my robe cooking breakfast, and so I asked the kids to if they would get dressed, and they would go down and ask these kids to please leave the treehouse, not play in it without any adults down there. So Colby and Sierra and Canyon headed down to talk to these kids and ask them to please leave the treehouse. So I just go about my business thinking that problem was taken care of. And 12 to 15 minutes later, my kids aren't back, and I don't see them in the house anywhere. So I go to the window, and I see that these kids are face to face now. And I'm thinking, oh, by their body language, it doesn't look like it's going very well. So I go outside and stand on the deck, and I'm watching what's taking place. And I can't hear anything, but I can see that Colby's got his hands in his sweatshirt, and I can see his head moving, talking to the other little boy, and then the other boy is talking back to Colby. And the next thing I know, Colby just rears off and punches this kid right in the face. Now, I know I said that I'm going to tell stories to bring us together, and I am. I'm not advocating violence here, but this is just what happened. So Colby punches this kid in the face. The kid falls on the ground. Colby jumps on top of him and then just starts punching him. As this is happening, the other kid's brother jumps on top of Colby's back and starts punching Colby in the back of the head. Now, as that happens, Sierra jumps on top of that other kid and starts punching him in the back of the head. So there's a melee going on down at the treehouse. Everybody's punching everybody except for Canyon. Canyon was probably 5, 6 years old at the time, and he's just standing there watching. He isn't participating. He's just watching what's taking place. So as I see this happen, I yell down there. I yell at him to knock it off. I tell the kids to come back. Kids come back up, and I want to know what's going on. I'm like, what is happening? Why are you guys fighting? And the kids tell me what happened. And long story short, with regards to what the verbal exchange that took place was, Colby told them they needed to leave. They said, we don't have to leave. This is a free country, which is true. And Colby said, yes, but this is our property, and we can't have you down here with no adult supervision. The kid said, we're not leaving. You can't make us. Colby said, yes, I can, and proceeded to wail on the kid. Now, what did I learn from watching my kids that morning about us as human beings? Each one of my kids were at different points in their lives. Colby being the oldest, he was the one that was doing the majority of the speaking. Sierra was second oldest, and she was sitting there watching and observing. And Canyon being the third youngest, he was just kind of hanging out, watching what was taking place. Colby, based on the situation, he took the initiative and he threw the first punch. Okay? So he just jumped in head first. He's like, I was charged with getting these people out of the treehouse. I am going to do that. Now, as he's involved in this fight, Sierra just sat there and she didn't do anything until the other kid's brother jumped in and started punching Colby in the back of the head. That was the stimulus that she needed to say, okay, it's time for me to get involved. So she jumps in and is now involved in the fight. Her participation is now, she's actively participating and engaged in what's taking place. But Canyon, even though all that took place, he didn't get involved. He sat there and watched. Now, at some point in our lives, we are going to be one of those kids. At some point, we're going to need to be Colby, who just takes the initiative and gets in there and starts the fight and goes after it. And then sometimes in our lives, it's going to take a little bit of prodding, like Sierra. It's going to take, something's going to have to happen in order for us to get involved. Canyon, sometimes we're just going to sit back and observe and learn. And we're each one of those for multiple reasons. See, when I look at Canyon was just a little guy. He didn't have the confidence to jump in and start fighting. He was scared. He flat told me, he said, I didn't want to get in the fight. I was scared of what was going on. So he just sat back and watched. And not that that's a bad thing. Sometimes that's what we need to do. We need to sit back and we need to observe and learn from what was taking place. So he did just sit there because he let fear hold him back in his case. Sierra was a little timid at first. She didn't get involved until she saw her brother now getting punched in the back of the head by somebody else while he was fighting with somebody else. So it's 2-on-1, and that's what it took for her to get involved. And sometimes that's what it takes, is we need to be in a situation that we're no longer okay with what is going on. Something in life has caused us to say, I am no longer okay with being comfortably uncomfortable. And that's where she was at. And that's what it took to get her into the fight. Colby was just doing what he was told. He was being assertive, and he didn't necessarily think about what he was doing when he reared off and punched this kid, but he just jumped in and did it. So those 3 examples are something that at some point in our lives we will be one of those 3 kids. And sit back and learn from that. Guys, learn from the experience. Look back at what we have done, what you have done, and try and draw something from that and gain something from that. As I watched my kids go through that, I looked at my own life, and at different times in my life and in different situations, I was able to relate to each one of my kids and to what they were going through. And the great thing about that is I was able to ask myself, why was I like Sierra? Or why was I like Colby? What was it about the situation that caused me to do or not do whatever I was doing? And I really feel that it's important to sit back and reflect on our actions and to learn from what we do, because there's something to gain from all of our experiences. We just have to choose to look at the experience that way, as a positive learning experience. And so my recommendation, and what I hope we all can do, is to look at our life's experiences and gain something positive from them. Now you might ask, well, what positive can you gain from your kids getting in a fight? Well, I hope that I was able to explain that to you today, that there's always something good that we can take out of every situation if we choose to. And it might seem negative at first, but if we sit back and reflect, we have something to gain. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next Stories with Steve.